I'm digging the camo, Keith.
We just want to let you know that the YouTube is live.
It's not functioning properly.
No, I think it is. I'm just
Oh.
going to check with Brad.
So we're recorded? We're good?
I'm waiting for Brad to confirm, but it says it's recording on my email saying it's live, so.
Laurie, it appears to be working.
Perfect. I did it right.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name's Kyle Stone. I'm the vice mayor, but acting, I guess, today as the mayor, right, Jeremy?
That's right.
Okay. Today's good enough. We're going for the workshop today. It is March 29th, 2021 at 6 p.m. We are obviously live on YouTube and live via Zoom. Lori, will you take roll call?
Mayor Brennan, Vice Mayor Stone,
Here.
Councilmember Brandon,
Here.
Councilmember Deambra,
Here.
Councilmember Prince.
Here. So item number 1 is an update on US 1 bridge replacement. Jeremy, can you lead us the way?
I'm going to turn it over to Lisa Stone right off the bat. I know Councilmember Deambra would wanted an update and maybe ask some questions. And so with that, Ms. Stone can provide that. And I know we have some guests that will add to the presentation as well.
Correct. Thank you for having us here tonight. My name is Lisa Stone. I'm with Kinley Horn, and we performed a PD&E study, which later went to design. Mike Salino was on the phone. He's the project manager with Hardesty in Hanover. And we also have Dane Wong, who is the project manager with DOT. And then Jim Simoslawski is also with Kinley Horn, and he worked on the maintenance of traffic. So I'm hoping this works. I think we opened it up for Mike to be able to provide commentary on the presentation. Mike, are you able to hear us?
Yes, perfectly. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Good.
So go right ahead. Tell me if you can see this. All right, Mike, can you see this?
No, are you sharing presentation right now?
I don't
No,
know if
we're-
you're able to see it. It's the presentation that we provided earlier, if you want to just go through that PDF.
Oh yeah, I'll just go through that. I see it up on the monitor. So first of all, Mike Solano, thank you for the introduction, Lisa. We have Bing Lang on the call as well, and the video. She's the FTOT project manager. Council members, vice mayor. I believe I heard that Mayor Brennan is not there today. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Council members and Doug Chambers, director, and Jeremy, village manager. Really appreciate this opportunity to present to you tonight and field your questions and concerns as necessary. You know, we had a public meeting last year, March 5th, and that was right before all of our live streams. You know, we were talking about at the public meeting. We're all aware of what might be coming with this pandemic, but I don't think any of us predicted, obviously, what the next year and what 2020 and now 2021 is going to look like. So, you know, that was a year ago. So this presentation will serve as both a reminder for those of you who may have been at the presentation last year, who've been looking at the project website, at the documents. It will also serve as informational for those who did not attend the public meeting, didn't have a chance to look at information on the project website. We'll give that website address in the presentation. But also we'll have updates on what we've been doing for a year and what the schedule is. And I'm sure that's really why we're here, was to give you guys updates, since we have a whole year of both plans development, production, and we also have more of an idea of the construction schedule that we will share with you in the presentation. So this is the agenda. Again, project overview and need. Some of this might be repetitive for those who have been engaged throughout this whole process. Some of the new bridge replacement features that are exciting and will definitely enhance the area. Our chosen construction approach, you know, probably all anxious to hear that. And again, this is exactly what we presented last year. That approach hasn't changed, but, you know, for those who weren't there last year who may have forgotten, I think it's a good reminder. The pre-detour intersection improvements and traffic management, we'll get into that. Some of the environmental considerations of this project. This is a pristine area, it's a beautiful area, there's a lot of gems and treasure right in your backyard here that we need to protect. We have considered that in the design. The aesthetics of the new bridge, numerous stakeholder engagements, and an update. You know, at the end, I think the aptly put at the end of this agenda is an update on the project status and schedule, which we're all probably anxious to hear about. Slide 3, please. So this is an aerial view showing you're all aware of this project where it is.
Sorry, Mike, we're having trouble with the track page.
And, sorry. It's a unique area. It has very unique and historical features that we will be protecting during construction. It's really part of our design, part of the plans. We will be part of the construction to protect the lighthouse and the museum. It's very critical for this project. There's also adjacent property owners and key stakeholders that are very quite next door. The proximity is very close to the project. We met with all these stakeholders during the process. Next slide. So why are we doing this project? So as presented over the years during these project presentations and workshops and so forth, here we have an old bridge. It's over 60 years old. It was built in 1858. Therefore, it's structurally deficient. It's not going to fall down anytime soon. It's just, it needs to be, it essentially means it's past the point where you can do repairs and according to a cost-benefit analysis. That's what structurally deficient means. It also has facilities for bikes and peds that are outdated. That's what functional obsolescence means. That's the term we use. It also has substandard navigational appearances, which will be greatly improved with the new bridge. Next slide. So right off the bat, we'd like to show everyone what the comparison of the new bridge from the views at Saltfish Bay Park. You see today's bridge with the light in front of the lighthouse in the background. The new bridge will also have what's called a twin double leaf bascule span. It's a fancy name for the drawbridge. It will have the same configuration as the existing. It'll just be higher and also have better deck features for traffic and pedestrians and bicycles. Next slide. So one of the sorry, it's hard to see what slide we're on slide 6, correct?
Yes.
So one of the features of the new bridge being a modern bridge, a modern design, you know, the old bridge, as you see on the left here, if there's voters in present or in the audience online in the Zoom call, you know that we have the existing bridge as this, what we call forest, so to speak, or bridge pilings. The new bridge will have much less of that and be a much cleaner, open appearance as now we can span longer with the new bridge technology. I think that'll provide a lot of view opportunity or enhanced viewing of this beautiful world.
And also on the south side, we're moving the observation pier, fishing pier underneath. So
Yeah, thank you.
Relocation of
We're not
that.
showing that in that right side, but we will be, we'll show you on a plan view for more clarity later. But the existing observation deck, adjacent to 1001, will be demolished and rebuilt under the new bridge deck and accessible from the riverboat. On the next slide, you can really see the difference between the existing, what we call section or typical section, which shows essentially the lane configuration and sidewalks and bicycle facilities, which are fairly non-existent on the existing bridge, and what the new bridge will look like with, you know, modern facilities for bicycles and pedestrians with 8-foot sidewalks, 8-foot bike lanes, and also maintaining existing 2 lanes in each direction. This is not a capacity improvement project, so we're maintaining the same northbound 2 lanes and southbound 2 lanes on this bridge. Which also is noteworthy is the fact that we'll have a solid deck. That's all new bridges for water, common transportation are constructed with solid decks. So unlike when you travel the bridge on a bicycle or a car, now you know that there's that open grading, which could be noisy and a bit of an uncomfortable ride. That rideability will be greatly improved with solid deck. Next slide, we show preview of the aesthetics a little closer. You can see that this should show the rendering, the new deck views. Just wanted to give them an idea of what bicyclists and pedestrians and the traveling public will experience the best that we can on the 2-dimensional slide to show the new control house. The bridge control house is another little house that we decorated aesthetically for access for maintenance workers. And you can see that this would just be a big enhancement as far as connectivity of pedestrians and bicyclists across this bridge. On slide 9, we show the enhanced navigation clearances, which will do a lot of things, but mainly, if you're a boater, you're going to have a lot wider navigation clearance, which is measured between the fender systems. Right now it's 90 feet, which is substandard, and it's going to the Coast Guard standard of 125 feet for this area. And also the height of the bridge, we're raising slightly by about 17 feet, and that was required and reported during the previous public meetings. And that is going to reduce the number of on-demand openings that is required at this site. So as you know, painfully know, this bridge opens on demand as a boat requires openings. The bridge tender is required on the U.S. Coast Guard to open the bridge. By raising the bridge as we need to by design, that reduction, there's a significant reduction, greater than 44% in reducing reduction in openings. Next slide, we're going to talk about some of the bridge aesthetics. And we did have a bridge aesthetics committee that was developed during the study, and we conducted several meetings. The purpose, and Lisa, correct me, but in addition to Mayor Brennan, we had several members, several community
We had folks from Tequila. Can we hear you still? Did we lose your mic? Might have lost him.
and Lisa,
There, now we can hear you. I was going to
been a
say
while
we had,
ago, but I forget.
no, we had Doug, participated, and we had folks from Tequesta and Jupiter.
That's right, Doug, yes, yeah, thank you. I knew there was, Doug was at the meetings too. So the purpose of these aesthetic committee meetings was to not necessarily drive the totality or the ultimate design, but just to provide input so we know their concerns and preferences, which is also driven by, the ultimate design is also driven by bridge tender visibility, which is really important for safety of the traveling public, for vehicular bikes and bicycles and pedestrians. And there's also an FDOT maintenance needs that drives as part of driving the design. And we'll be showing this design in subsequent meetings during construction, and just a little preview. This is not the last. We're not going to, show you this presentation and leave you guys out during construction. We're going to be fully engaged throughout construction with updates and enhancements and so forth. All right. So the next few, we're going to segue into something we've discussed over the years, both with the council members one-on-one in our closed meetings, and also in public meetings such as this, including the public meeting last year, because it's a big deal for the community. We totally get it. how we're going to construct this bridge. Right? It's a major construction project. You're replacing a significant structure, and it requires some impacts to do it. So we wanted to reduce these impacts. So how do we decide how the construction of this bridge will take place? So, there is 3 construction methods that are typically evaluated, and in this case, not pre-evaluated. There's a temporary bridge. Some of you might know what's going on in Southern Boulevard and West Palm Beach. But in this case, by inspection, we just didn't have the right-of-way or the property to provide on the embankments to have a temporary bridge and then, get back onto US 1. So this is a different situation than what we have also in the project. On slide 12, another method of replacing a bridge of this type is what we call conventional phase construction. And that entails removing half of the bridge, as we have a bridge with 2 lanes in northbound, 2 lanes in southbound, remove half of it while constructing the other half of the bridge adjacent. Now, this was studied extensively because there was there was some stakeholder, a significant stakeholder, including you all in the town of Jupiter and some others that were in local businesses and residents that, when this was presented before we did our evaluation, it seemed, attractive because the bridge wasn't closed. It's still driving the bridge, at least, 1 lane in each direction. But we did an extensive evaluation, and there was a lot of risk of this approach. Namely, the bridge, removal of half of the bridge with no traffic on the other half is required. So you're going to already have a detour. You can't saw cut, so to speak, the bridge in half while the vehicles are on the other half. So that detour could be, required to do that work could be at least 4 months. And that's if everything goes correct. No issues, no unforeseen conditions, contractor doesn't get any snags in that process. So there's also an increase in tax to the vehicles that will remain after that process is done with 1 way in each direction. Is now going to be driving on the same grade, same height, that still opens 18 times a day sometimes. So that would cause significant impacts, according to our traffic studies. Just having 1 lane in each direction, the bridge still has to open for boats. So that was another issue that contributed to our decision about this approach. And there's also a risk of settlement because you're doing significant work next, very, very close to the existing bridge.
Well, and also, Mike, like we talked about, it's better to have a planned detour than an unplanned detour.
Yes. So, and yeah, that's a great point. So when should you have issues when they have in this approach, when you have 1 lane of traffic only 1 down the bridge, 1 lane of traffic in each direction, should there be an issue, as discussed with the contractor getting into some unforeseen condition, when you have to detour, now you're doing an unplanned detour, which is very good. So on slide 13, we talk about the 3rd construction approach. Considering what we just discussed on the 2nd approach, the phase construction, we dubbed the phrase hybrid phase construction. Now, this is the preferred method of construction for this project due to all the issues we discussed in the previous slide. Now, it does require a detour. And we'll get into what we understand the sensitivity of the detour and the impact. So we'll talk about what we've included in this project or will be implemented in this project to mitigate or reduce those impacts and make it a lot less of a pain, so to speak, during construction. So there will be a pre-detour phase, and we're going to get into the length and the timing of that later, where we implement intersection improvements. So we'll talk about which intersections in a minute. And also the installation of intelligent transportation system features. That will help alleviate traffic in real time. During the pre-detour phase, while you still have 4 lanes, 2 in each direction on the bridge, this is why this is called a hybrid. It's still a phase, but we're not invoking or starting the detour phase. Contractor, as you see in the image on the bottom right, will be constructing as much of the new bridge as possible that's outside the footprint of the existing. This way, we can reduce how much that detour pays once they demolish the existing bridge. So that's important. We're looking at a 20-month detour schedule. Once all the other features are in place, the intersection improvements and the ITS, or what we call intelligent transportation systems, are in place. The detour will not happen until all those things are in place. Once the detour is complete, you construct the remaining half of the bridge. So during the detour, they're going to essentially, the detour will end when we have at least 1 lane of traffic in each direction on a new higher bridge. That's important because now you have 1 lane in each direction. In contrast to the other alternative, on a higher bridge, it's going to open up much less. So you're not going to have that issue with 1 lane in each direction, where the intersections will start really piling up more frequently because of a lower bridge. This is a higher bridge and will open up much less. I know that was a long way of saying that this could be a lot more beneficial for the intermediate stage. So once they're done with that, detour is complete, they build the other half of the bridge. Okay. On slide 14, and as presented last year and would like to present today, we just summarized the benefits of the so-called hybrid phase construction. So it avoids that delicate removal of half of the existing bridge. And that, we call it delicate because we met with a multitude of contractors that do this type of work. We did our own analysis on this. It would be delicate. It reduces the risk of the existing bridge settling. And then you have, as we discussed, unplanned detours. We get to that higher bridge with 2 lanes in an expedited fashion. We're able to get bikes and peds. Correspondingly, we're able to get bicycle and pedestrian facilities and a new left turn lane to County Road A1A in an expedited fashion. Those are all important features of the improvements here. Also, what I didn't discuss on the other slide was when you have 1 lane in each direction and you're building right next to the adjacent bridge, we thought about the workers and work zone mobility and safety. That's another thing that's another important feature of this construction approach. And it reduces, if you look at the total overall duration of the project, comparing the conventional-based construction with hybrid-based construction, it reduces the duration by about 18 months. Okay, so now let's talk about, on slide 13, the intersection improvements. So there are 4 intersections we will be improving to alleviate the detour. And we'll get into the details of each of the intersection improvements in a minute. But they are at, as you can imagine, the key, if you drive this area a lot, key intersections. US 1 at Beach Road, alternate A1A at Old DC Highway, alternate A1A at Indiantown Road, or State Road 706, and US 1 at Indiantown Road, State Road 706. Now, all of those intersection improvements, totally except, because it's closest to you guys, it will be temporary, except for the alternate neighborhood and Old Dixie Highway. That will be a permanent intersection permit, and we'll get into that in a minute. The new intelligent traffic systems will all be permanent, and will be at every intersection in the detour route installed. So, following the bridge project, with the ITS, intelligent traffic systems installed, traffic will be alleviated or should be improved, traffic flow should be improved relative to today's traffic flow. In addition, traffic management, there's an active traffic management system in Palm Beach County, and this ITS will be used to help Palm Beach County's traffic management system do real-time adjustments of traffic lights to help alleviate issues when they see them on their monitors. So this isn't a lot to take in, but it's, we worked really hard to make sure that we can put as much as we can in this project along that detour route to make that detour phase as painless as possible, but we recognize there'll still be something. On the next slide, slide 16, we just spoke about what some of these permanent intelligent transportation systems will be entailed. This is for anyone who's curious about what kind of devices, and you've seen these devices, next time you're at a traffic light that has these systems, and they're prolific around Brown County and Palm Beach County. You will see these devices on the light. Sometimes you might confuse them with or mistake them for monitoring by the local police department, but a lot of times, more often than not, these are just devices like Bluetooth, travel time devices. There's CCTVs there that are helping the signals to communicate to each other with, dependent upon the vehicles that are in queue at the traffic lights. There's some other devices here. And essentially what we're trying to build or develop during the construction phase with these permanent and temporary features is a smart work zone. Now this is kind of on slide 17, almost drastically changing topics a bit, but it's important to note that during this, included in this project, there was minor repairs that will be performed by the same contractor that's replacing the US 1 bridge, and that's the minor repairs to the alternate neighborhood bridge. It will be formed during the pre-detour phase, so prior to the detour, and the work involved is substructure repairs. Now, this is an important change that we always want to be, the department always wants to be forthcoming and transparent. From last year, this is before the analysis was done. Last year, we presented before the analysis was done on this bridge repair. But we will have single lane closure required for the substructure repairs. Last year, we reported that it would not impact the vehicle traffic. And the schedule for this, to be short, it'll start this August. Here's the first schedule update for those taking notes. This August 2021 through February 2022 is the anticipated schedule for these repairs, and there will be no impacts to navigation traffic. So now on the next slide, we get back into the intersection improvements for the main bridge project. And so the first one is the permanent intersection improvement, put the best one first for all of us. And this is the alternate A1A at Old Dixie Highway. And if you can see, I don't know if you can see, but you can see the background of the existing intersection overlaid with the Hamlet Brands. So essentially this shifts the intersection to the southwest a little bit, because in our traffic study we realized that it was kind of close to the Beach Road US 1 intersection. This shift helped alleviate some traffic just by making that shift. Lengthening the left turn from northbound alternate A1A to northbound Old Dixie Highway. If anyone's traversed that, you know how that queue for that left turn gets run along, especially in peak hours. an addition of a signal there, a traffic signal to help, to help alleviate some of the traffic woes at that intersection. And this would be, again, before the detour, and this would be a permanent intersection.
And Mike, this intersection and the next one we're going to talk about, Mayor Brennan was very involved and vocal about, so she assisted with some of the background of
Right.
this.
So the next one is another adjacent intersection to, it's an adjacent intersection to the previous one, and this is at Beach Road and US 1, or still considered alternate with A, almost to that intersection. So what we're going to do there is to be a temporary intersection improvement. And our traffic studies revealed that we need, during pre-detour phase, or during the detour, 2 right turning lanes from southbound US 1 to get onto alternate lane with Beach Road. Now this will be reverted back to all 4 lanes. So what I want to show again, there was an update from last year, there's a minor change I wanted to show that we continued over this last spring and summer. In our analysis, we showed, if you look at the left, showing at the March 5th, 2020 public meeting, we had 2 through lanes. And we were not showing a bicycle lane on that west side. If you look at the 2 right turn lanes that are going to alternate lane. But we really wanted to include that bicycle lane because it's existing today. And when you implement that extra right turning lane, originally we didn't have bike lane. So we updated that, and we only have 1 through lane because remember the bridge is going to be closed. So we thought 1 through lane to get to Riverside Drive, Jupiter Cove, and some of the shops is adequate instead of 2 turn lanes and no bike lane. We have the bike lane transition from the temporary condition through the intersection in a safe manner. So that's a change we wanted to highlight to everyone. The next intersection improvement is obviously further south, slide 20.
I don't think
This
that
is-
art gallery's there anymore. You've driven by the
yeah.
last couple of days.
Yeah, this is definitely a photo of what's going on at that site. That art gallery is not there anymore. But we have 3 left turning lanes from northbound US 1 to westbound Indian Town Road. Now today, no, there's 2 left turning lanes. Again, this is implemented prior to the detour phase. We're going to get into when this all happens and how long that is. And it's going to be reverted back to the current condition following completion of, and this is important, this goes for all of the temporary intersection improvements. When all 4 lanes are open to traffic, not when 2 lanes are installed or implemented on the bridge. Only when all sections of the project is complete. And the next one, slide 21, is the intersection improvements, temporary intersection improvements at Indian Town Road, alternate lane A. Right now, there's a single left turning lane to go from southbound alternate lane to eastbound 706. We're going to have 2. And there's 2 right turning lanes from westbound 706 to northbound alternate lane A in this temporary condition. And again, once again, this is the temporary intersection improvement reverted back when all 4 lanes are open to traffic on the new bridge. So the next few slides, go to slide 22. We have a guest here. It's our maintenance of traffic designer. Essentially, we want to walk through you what the maintenance of traffic will be, because we felt like this would be in the interest, the village's interest, at those 2 intersections, alternate A1A and Old Dixon Highway, and the Beach Road intersection too. So we're going to step through. Jim Simaslawski, who is the designer of this temporary traffic control plan, which we call it, or maintenance of traffic, is going to step through what those phases look like. So Jim?
Thank you, Mike. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Yes. we broke down the means of traffic of the A1A Old Dixie Highway into several multi-phased operations in order to minimize the amount of disruption to the public, but also provide enough room to the contractor that they can safely and quickly build the improvements. The challenge of this intersection is that we're doing a lot of improvements right on top of the old improvements, so maintaining traffic can be fairly difficult, but we've come along with a MOT plan that maintains the signalizing operations, and during the off-peak periods, that's when we will have lane closures, where we'll reduce the lanes down to one lane to provide the contractor to be able to work in the zone. And then at the end of that work period, and then when traffic starts to build up again, reopen those lanes so that the traffic can flow through the area. Let's go to the next slide. So here we look at phase 3 and phase 4. That work right there is done slightly off of the existing roadway limits, so that work can easily be done without major lane closures in the area. We're able to do some median work. We've got some drainage work in the center of the intersection to address. But again, this has all been planned out to minimize the amount of disruption, but at the same time allow for all the operations that happen during peak periods and keeping that traffic open. Next slide. And at the end of the phase of construction will be the installation of the new mast arm signal. The reason for that is the procurement of mast arm materials usually takes a number of months in order to have it delivered and put onto the site. But at the end of the phase, the traffic signal will be installed. We will be maintaining pedestrians through this area using the longitudinal channelization devices to keep pedestrians safe and out of the construction zone. We estimate that total time to build this 5-phase traffic control plan for this intersection is 220 days, which is about 8 months. And all of this work will be done before any detours made on the existing Jupiter Bridge. Next slide. When we come to the A1A, Beach Road, and US 1, as Mike had said earlier, the temporary operations and restriping of the intersection is to form 2 southbound dual rights that will be going on to alternate A1A, and only a single lane going southbound towards the bridge. And the reason for that is the bridge is only going to have 1 lane anyway, and then when it's closed and we're only providing access to Jupiter Cove and Riverside Drive, we only need to have 1 lane furnished through the intersection. Also, not really shown here, but it's the fact that people coming out of Jupiter Cove, Riverside Drive area, they'll actually be able to come back through here to this intersection and go northbound and make turns. So this intersection will operate in all 4 legs. However, the one leg, the southern leg, will have a very small amount of traffic only because of the bridge closure. Next slide. And then here is the what we were just talking about during the bridge closure, the intersection south of alternate A1A and US 1 that will be fairly well shut down. We will allow operations through the construction zone. We do maintain traffic to Jupiter Cove as well as Riverside Drive. Next slide. And here's the final configuration. At the end of the bridge construction, and when the bridge is reopened to 4 lanes in each direction, or 2 lanes in each direction, you will have the ability to go out here, restripe, provide the bike lanes, a single right turn lane southbound, 2 throughs, and very similar to what is out there today with all the improvements that were planned out. I'll turn it back to you, Mike.
Yes, thanks. Thank you, Jim. And I don't have a packed agenda, so I'm going to go fairly quick for the rest of the presentation. The pause really on the schedule. So on slide 28, we had environmental considerations for protecting the Jupiter Lighthouse and Americans Quarters, aka museum. for relocating the Super Inlet Museum operations, which would be trails in the parking lot. There are delicate artifacts that will be relocated off-site. As far as the lighthouse, lens wrapping will occur during higher vibration, relatively higher vibration construction, essentially when you're driving piles. There's in the contract with the contractor, there's seagrass and mangrove impact mitigation. The lighting design was designed for XC turtles, and we do limit nighttime noise producing activities to protect the aquatic species in the area. On the next slide, just to demonstrate the significance, there's 2 slides of this. You can read all these, don't panic, but we just did a lot of stakeholder engagement on this, and on slide 30, the point that we want to make, as alluded to before, doesn't stop here. Engagement and updates will continue through the whole construction. We'll have workshops, presentations that needed, and just to keep everyone engaged and up to date about what's going on in construction. So to that, on the last slide, or the second last slide, really, we have the schedule slide. Let's talk about where we are. This is an important update, I think. Where we've already performed our final plans packaging. That's when we go through all our checks and checklists and everything to make sure the plans are complete. And as of Friday, this past Friday, the bidding contractors have the plans package. And they have 92 months to review it and develop their bids, which is on May 26th. And according to our schedule, construction will start in August 2021. Pre-detour construction begins. Intersection improvements, ITS features, repair of alternating Woodbury Bridge, and new construction of the new bridge outside the footprint of the existing bridge. Now, this is an update from last year, and it is on the project website, but we haven't had a chance to present this yet. To expedite construction, to get the 20 months of detour or less, and to only impact one season, we went back and sharpened our pencils, and we now are extending the pre-detour phase to March of 2023. There's a number of reasons for that, but mainly, well, there's 2 key reasons. Give the contractor enough opportunity to build as much bridge as possible. This way that we can meet that goal of 20-month detour. And spring is important because with that 17 to 20 month or whatever it winds up being in the detour, you only affect one tourist season, which is an important commitment that we discussed with a lot of our stakeholders. Open all 4 lanes of traffic to the new bridge in May of 2025, and then 2 months after that, after some, few little minor details, the project is completed in August. Now, if you see the asterisk there, final schedule developed by a contractor, please note that we provided the necessary provisions or the guidelines for the contractor to essentially use this schedule that outlines here to meet their commitments, and it's going to be incentivized and incentivized for the contractor to meet the schedule, especially that detour phase and then total project completed. And finally, on the last slide is the information on the project website. It's been made available to everyone who's attending this meeting, and anyone who wants to get on the mailing list, please email us at as indicated on this slide. So that concludes our presentation. I know there was a lot. It's been a year, and that's probably why we felt like we had to go back and really just kind of step by step we were presenting. So I don't know if there's going to be a Q&A section, but we're available for it right now if needed.
Yes, gentlemen, thank you. That was very good. Lisa, thank you for putting that all together and giving us that update. Does any other council members have any questions?
A couple of quick questions. Masthead improvements, the signal that's going to go in at Old Dixie and alternate A1A, and then the signals at US 1 and Beach Road, or alternate, well, you have the alternate A1A / Beach Road. Are those going to, are we going to replace them with mastheads so we don't have the wires hanging over the roads?
Yeah, that's a great question. The signal, the new signal at the new intersection, alternate avenue, Lucy Highway will be a mess. Unfortunately, we will not be replacing the signals at US 1 with Beach Road.
You know, when they redid US 1, we had requested mastheads at that intersection as well. Is there a reason why that can't be accommodated with this work?
Well, you know, that intersection improvement essentially came very late in this project, as Dora announced, and just was not enough time for the extensive utility coordination required. And just keep in mind, this is a major bridge replacement project. It's not really an intersection improvement project. So we included in this project what we can from just from a logistical standpoint. Ben, would you like to explain?
Yeah. This is Ping Wang, the project manager from FDOT. Basically, this is as Mike said, is a bridge replace project. So you have a funding issue as well. So you replace bridge, every year have a bridge replacement funds and the bridge maintenance fund. So this is basically a bridge funding. Then since we need to replace this bridge, we have to detour. So something we must have to do can demonstrate it, then we can include it in the project. But it's not an intersection improvement, it's not a roadway improvement. So if anything extra, we're not allowed to use this funding to do that.
No, and I understand what you're saying. I guess this is a request that's been made over a period of time. And again, that area, obviously, if we have a hurricane coming through, those wires, those signals are at risk. So we've done improvements up and down US 1. They're going to do it at alternate A1A and Old Dixie. It seems as though it would be logical to try to fit this into the program at this point in time, if it's humanly possible in any way, shape, or form.
I think the traffic operation, they have a push button contract. I think you maybe can request that kind of contract, just to replace the mast on the wire stand to the mast on. So that's the kind of the contract will do this kind of improvement from the traffic operation. But it's not including this project.
So, that's duly noted, and, believe us, when we drive the project and we know about the, they're called, those wires and all that stuff, that intersection, we would love to have that included too. It's just a logistical issue. However, as being indicated, we will point this out to traffic guys. I know they're aware of it, but let's see if maybe we can get someone a separate project to address that and follow this project for it. We'll talk about it, right, Ben?
Yeah, we'll report it to traffic. But meanwhile, as you know, this project is about to let in May. So, like a rule of thumb, you don't want two contracts work in the same area. So as soon as that, the contract have a right way, have a control. So even we need address that has to be addressed after construction is complete.
Okay. No, I understand the challenge. It's just, like I said, it's been something on people's radar, as you've even acknowledged, for a period of time. My only other question is, when you start the pre-detour construction, I'm just wondering how disruptive that's going to be, because you've got it scheduled to start in August, and I understand there's a contracting phase that has to take place here, but it's scheduled to start in August and it's going to run into February. So you actually are running into, first of all, you're starting at the height of hurricane season, and then you're also running into the seasonal traffic that's going to occur. I didn't know if there was any way to advance that timetable a bit so that you were starting sooner and finishing sooner. Again, with the contracting phase and the plans you have in place, maybe that's not possible, but it seems as though if it were, that might be beneficial for all involved.
That's a good point. The August start is our right now is a sort of informed guess about when the contract will be ready to get signed contracts, get into the peak. But we could foresee a potential for a July start that could happen, and also an earlier finish, because what we're showing you is fairly conservative estimate on some of that stuff.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
I had a similar question for the streetlight, but it was answered.
And the alternate A1A bridge, just to confirm, the plan is to do that maintenance overnight and early hours, correct?
Is that correct? That's a good question. Civil is the engineer record for that project. Is the lane closures restricted to nighttime? Civil, if you could hear us?
I can, but can you hear me? Because I
Yeah.
need to feel muted. Oh, okay. Yes, no, this is not the case. It's not restricted to nighttime, which is why they're closing a lane of traffic. So the only restriction for nighttime would be for the joint repairs. That is above the deck, but all the work that is to be done below the bridge, which is the substructure repairs, is not restricted to nighttime.
But you were concerned about the roadway work, correct? Not the substructure?
Yeah, only because alternate A1A obviously is a really popular route, and this is kind of going to hit people quickly since it's in August, the plan. Just curious if you're going to be shutting down one lane on each side during the
I think
day.
it's one lane. I think it's one lane at a time.
One lane at a time, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, not one southbound, one northbound. It's just one southbound and following by one northbound.
Okay.
Please note that the department is trying the best because the original is totally separate project. We want to make sure don't have conflict. So we push this project led with this big replacement. So make sure whoever win this contract know this work must be done before detour start. So that we won't have any interruption during the detour time, have a lane closure on the A1A.
That's a great point. So the main bridge contractor, it's in his interest, or their interest, to include that ultimately A1A work prior to the detour, and also the excavate. If it was not differently, that might not be the case. You would have an overlapping situation, which would not be good. That's the reason, the motivation behind putting ultimately A1A bridge repair in this project.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have one quick question. I noticed on there that you showed an incentive to the contractor to finish on time, but I didn't see anything in there related to any liquidated damages for them not finishing on time.
Yeah, try
So,
not to present all those ugly details, but, yeah, so as soon as starting at the 20-month milestone, that's when the disincentives, not liquidated damages, that's different, but that's when the disincentives start. So there's maximum incentives is before 20 months, and then at 20 months, nothing as far as incentive bonus, and then following that is a disincentive, the payback essentially for not achieving that detour phase threshold of 20 months.
so just to be clear, are you including liquidated damages into the contract?
Yes, the department's standard specifications always include liquidated damages.
I thought so.
That would be for the total project duration.
I just know the debacle that they had when they were doing the bridges going over to Palm Beach. I mean, that went on for, golly dog, a couple of years longer than what they originally had scheduled it for, and I'd hate to see this project linger on like that as well.
Yeah, so really the short answer is yes, liquidated damages are included in all activities projects as necessary. Right, they're only treated when it's necessary to treat them. That's essentially what should be schedule rules.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Young, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have two questions. What are the anticipated work hours for the bridge replacement?
Was that work hours for what? Sorry, Mr.
The bridge replacement, the US 1 bridge replacement, I don't know.
Yeah. So they have to abide by, it's in the contract, it's in the actual specification, the town of Jupiter's noise ordinance. There's a requirement there that's very specific. So I would, if I had to, I don't have the document in front of me, or had to put a time for the probably for noise and activity, it would probably be between 8 and 5 normal working hours.
Were you asking because of noise
Well, just
in general?
in
Okay.
general, yeah,
Yeah.
some days a week, or I know there's some environmental considerations too, so just.
Correct.
Yeah, that's important. We don't want, a lot of these species are active at night, and we don't, it's right in our commitments. We don't want it to disturb the water with noise generating activities at night, because there's some species that will potentially be affected. So that's a great point.
Okay, and my last question is, has there been any analysis done for any impacts this could have to nearby business revenue and maybe real estate sales in the area, that kind of thing during the project?
So, no, there hasn't been any of that. That is not included in our analysis. It's important to note that it's hard to gauge, since usually an improvement to a road or a bridge enhances the areas, which could boost sales. So those kinds of, that kind of calculus is not typically done for this type of a project, to understand what the business impacts are and not impacting the business directly. But, we appreciate that question, and I understand.
Have you ever seen a study done for that, from a municipality standpoint?
I've seen business impact when the business is directly impacted. I've seen studies like that in previous projects. And Lisa has a lot of experience.
Well, and I think we do get asked that a lot about real estate sales, and it is hard to grasp. Some people move to places for certain reasons. It just depends on the buyer or the seller. As far as the businesses go, we went above and beyond and did, you saw that table. There probably was another table that I just didn't include everything. But we really went out of our way. We went door to door talking. We know these people, by first name. I live in Jupiter, so I see these people quite a bit. So, they're always asking for an update. They know our cell phone numbers. They know our emails. So we've been very involved, and hopefully we can accommodate them with everything that we've done.
Just out of curiosity, what's the life expectancy of this bridge?
70?
So for current code, the design life, the theoretical design life, which is probably less than the actual design life, ultimate design, is 80 years. The new bridge, you were asking about the new bridge, right?
Yeah, the new bridge, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm assuming there was a traffic study for those 80 years, and there's absolutely no need for 3 lanes going northbound, southbound, or is there just no room?
I think the design year was, Lisa,
2040.
2040?
Yeah, we did a traffic analysis for 2040.
Typically, you don't do a traffic analysis for
The whole
the
town.
lifespan of the new structure.
Makes sense. I do have one question. I know that you guys have been talking to a lot of different people, and I just noticed it on slide 13 in the aspect of if we were, this is the partial opening of the one lane or 2 lanes, and I noticed that there's currently a bike lane there. Is there any thought of using 2 lanes during the rush hour going south in the morning and then switching it to 2 lanes going north in the afternoon and not using that bike lane and pedestrian lane?
Yeah, so we had that question a lot about reversing direction traffic. And we did study that. It just didn't include it on the slide or the discussion. It didn't seem to have any real benefit. And you'd be asking the contractor, essentially slowing down the bridge construction. The contractor would every day change the maintenance of traffic, all those equipment for maintaining traffic. So it didn't seem, essentially what I'm saying, that cost, so-called cost, that effort didn't really provide benefits. To have that every single day and changing out those features for maintaining traffic.
I appreciate that. I know that, perfect. I know that one of our biggest concerns is obviously the impact on the businesses and then the time with the residents moving to and through. We've got, as a village, I know, working on a couple different projects with the different businesses in the area to try to create some different events and some opportunities. So We would love your support in any way that we can to help promote those events, to get people to come here during those times. So I'm not sure if there's any other questions? No questions? We're good? Well, everyone in your team, Lisa and the gentlemen, I appreciate all your time and information. You guys have done an incredible job over the years of communicating to the public. It's hard. It's a hard task to communicate to the public, and they will definitely be communicating to you once it starts. It's going to be interesting. So we really do appreciate your time.
Thank you. Yeah, we will have a
Thank
meeting
you,
during the
everybody.
construction. So
Thanks, everybody.
all of you will be invited.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
All right. Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to item number 2, discussion of annexation. Mr. Allen.
So annexation of unincorporated areas of Cuesta has been on our comprehensive plan for a long time. In 2011, put together a completed annexation strategy that we will continue to follow with some updating of the statutes that govern annexation, as well as some of the property listings in that packet that you have. February 25th, the mayor and staff met with a group of residents from Acres Point regarding annexation of their enclave. We have another public meeting scheduled for April 13th. As you may or may not be aware, legislation recognized that enclaves can create significant problems. This is state legislation. In problems in planning, growth management, and service delivery, and therefore declares that it is its policy of the state to eliminate enclaves. Enclave means any unincorporated, improved, or developed area that is enclosed within and bounded on all sides of a single municipality. In order to expedite the annexation of enclaves of 110 acres or less, the most appropriate incorporate jurisdiction based on expiring or proposed service provision arrangements. A municipality may annex an enclave by interlocal agreement with county having jurisdiction of the enclave, which is what our intentions are, our plans to move forward. With the meeting on April 13th, I also will be directing NILSA to work with the county planning staff to put together an interlocal agreement for the village. Plan on having a resolution on the council agenda in May to vote on, and then from there that will accompany that interlocal agreement to the county and that application process. The mayor and I have met previously with Val Shea and Mayor Kerner on this topic with the county. Recently the mayor did speak to Ms. Marino, Maria Marino, our county commissioner, on this topic. I do have a planned meeting with Ms. Marino on this topic with an upcoming meeting. Once the mayor is selected, or in the future, it'd be important for the mayor or an elected official to go and meet with the county's elected officials and continue just to, I guess, educate them on the process and what direction we're going. No action is needed on this item tonight. It is an update unless there are any questions, concerns on the process, and council would like staff to consider something else or another direction to go. But that's the update I have for annexation.
Thank you. Any questions?
We are planning just to stay in that order that it's on in the attachment, yes?
Yes, ma'am, that's the plan.
I'm good tonight.
Bruce, any questions?
I'm good, Ben, thank you.
Molly? Good. No, I think this is absolutely incredible and very important to keep moving forward with this. It is no doubt could be very beneficial to all residents in the village of Cuesta and the surrounding areas that are currently unincorporated. Lots of opportunities. So I would say continue to move forward.
Thank you.
I think it was a very thorough job here putting all that stuff together. That's a great job. A lot of information in there.
99.5% was NILSA.
Well, you did a phenomenal job on it.
I may have changed a period or something somewhere.
I will say, I think as a council, we need to be willing to start communicating to as many people as possible, especially our residents, to share kind of the benefits of this for them. It could be very beneficial to them.
Yeah, any residents that we can have in support of this, even at the commissioner level, when we go to present this to commission, anybody in support of it will be very helpful for us. So if you know somebody that's a resident that would support this, we'd love to have them.
Someone like,
Contact me. I'll help coordinate.
one person that comes to mind is Mr. Bradford.
Since you brought that up, I generate a question. In efforts to do that, I know in phase 3 it said there was going to be some marketing efforts and materials prepared. Do we have that? Is there something? Okay. But we share with the public, not so much like what we're looking at, the 100-page plan. Is there any kind of marketing materials that we have already?
Yeah, we have a brochure, we have PowerPoint, we have letters. We'll be sending the letters out there in the next few days. We do have a brochure that we can share with anybody. I mean, Nilsa has put together a good one. I know it's been amended many times, but we have all up-to-date materials that we can share with anybody and everybody.
I think, when you look at this, and you look at the history of the efforts that have been made in the past, it's not so much getting Tequesta resident support for it. It's trying to get support within the enclaves that's the real challenge. I think we as a council and most people, I believe most residents within the village would be very supportive of it. I think most people feel like, hey, these folks are already getting the benefits of the village of Tequesta without actually having to be part of it. So again, I think I don't think there's any question there's strong resident support for it. Again, I think it's a matter of, we've got to sell it to the enclaves and sell the benefits. I think Mr. Bradford wrote an email to all of us, which kind of outlined some of his thinking on that. But I think it goes in line with the thinking that the council's had for a long time in terms of why it makes sense for these enclaves to be part of the village community. And as we alluded to, I think in one of our prior discussions, if we get everybody in, we have to obviously do the economic evaluations of the costs of bringing those in and any enhancements that have to be made to streets or any of those kinds of things. But there may be an opportunity as well then to reduce the millage area across the board for all residents, which would obviously be a benefit to everyone.
Any other comments? All right. Item number 3, discussion on proposed food truck ordinance. Nilsa.
Yes, good evening. So on the previous workshop, we got direction to prepare an ordinance. So this is the draft ordinance for the food trucks. And we are also prepared a checklist that is on the back of the ordinance. So we try our very best. We work very close, Keith and I and Lance, we were very close putting together this, and we are looking forward to receive your feedback.
Hang on, I'm loading. This is a checklist.
Any questions?
I have one.
Yeah, please.
I was reading back and forth and on the agenda, page 137 and 138, B says that it's allowed in all zoning districts, and then when you go down further, it kind of breaks up each type of truck in each type of district. So I wasn't clear, going back and forth, if in the residential areas, does it mean that someone, if they wanted to, and maybe it's highly unlikely, they could set up a one food truck like in their driveway at their house if they have an agreement with the owner, like if the outside vendor has an agreement with the owner, or if the owner owns the food themselves and serve out like from their driveway and from their house? That's what I was kind of getting confused, I think, when I was reading back and forth between the different zoning and then special event permit. So maybe you could explain that a little more?
Yes, that's a great question. So basically, I am looking at page 8 of the proposed draft, and it says residential zoning district. So basically, in A, is that if you can have a food truck on your single-family lot, in your home, basically, so for catering services, which means the intent is if you have a party, a birthday in your home, you can have inside your lot, a catering service. So, and it says very specifically, a copy of such written agreement shall be maintained in the mobile food truck at all the times during the event. So, and then also says there that clarify what is catering. So the catering services shall not include the vending of products from the mobile food truck itself during a catered event and does not include events that are open to the public. So the intent is very clearly, this is just for the owners of that specific home that they are having an event. It's a catering service. So, but if we need, Keith, please, if we need further clarification to strengthen the language, if there is any kind of doubt that that is the intent, we can definitely.
The question I have, and I know that we've done it in the country club, where we would bring a truck in and park it next to the boat ramp, and they were there to serve to the public, or the residents of the country club. Would that be an issue?
Well, and that is also here, that it says, if you are, here, B, property owned by homeowner association or property owners association. So that will fit that case because it was on a HOA site, I would say. So, and again, that is for that specific, it's like catering.
Correct.
It's not selling to anybody that is driving by, it's for that specific event that the HOA has in that specific case.
It's arranged, is basically what you're saying.
Yes, there is a written agreement, and it's not a food truck that anybody can go and buy from it.
But Nelson, when you talk about catering, because this was really a great question.
Mm-hmm.
Catering implies that the group that's sponsoring it has paid for the product. So this gets to the question, for example, if a homeowners association brings in a truck, can the individual residents who are part of that homeowners association go in and pay for product? Or does, the traditional term catering means whoever is authorized that event, they are paying for those services. So do we need clarification on that point? Because, what happens if you have it at, I'll play devil's advocate for a minute, you have it on the HOA. How does the HOA know for sure that every person that's coming up there, if they haven't paid for the products and services and have some method of determining who's coming to use that, how do they know somebody else isn't walking up there and paying for a particular product at that point in time?
We do have a method for that.
Okay, so.
At least for our HOA, we do.
I think the question would be, in Mr. Stone's example, that boat ramp property, do you know offhand, and I can't see the map, I don't remember how that
Who owns it?
slice is zoned. Is that a recreation open space?
It's recreation open space, and it is owned by the Tequesta Country Club Association.
So the way that this is drafted, a Class 1 mobile food truck, which is the typical food truck, would be permitted
under special
in a
permit.
designated parking area or pursuant to an approved special event permit from the village. So I think in the way this is drafted, if it's not a single-family lot,
Right.
then they could go, it could park, it could be in a designated parking area. We'd have to determine what the designated parking area is for a food truck on that property, and then it could operate to serve the folks coming and going. I suppose anybody, if they wanted to go out of their way and go to that boat ramp to get whatever that food truck is offering,
Right.
there's nothing that would stop
In that specific case, it's more like a special event. So shouldn't that be more like a special event?
Well, I think the way that it's drafted, it contemplates either. So, if the council wanted to tighten that up and require a special event permit.
I do know that the village does require an HOA to give permission for a property like that to be used by a business. So it can't just be anybody coming in. Again, it has to be arranged to some degree.
We can write that however you want. If we can tighten it up, we can loosen it up, but.
Well, I know that even our street, we've got permit to close the street down and brought in a food truck, and anybody in the neighborhood could come and purchase
So that
from it
would-
too.
seems to me that
That's a
would be a
special
special
event.
event.
That's a special event. I mean,
Okay.
if anybody, because catering is, like it was said, it's very specific.
Right.
The homeowner or the party already pay for it. It's not like you go and buy it. You know, catering means that if you're gonna have a food truck and then
Yeah, I think
so
the
buy, that's
catering-
more like a special
No,
event.
so here we are in almost April, you have a senior at Jupiter who's getting ready to graduate, you're gonna have a graduation party at your house, you want it catered by some
Right.
particular food truck. That food truck can come to your house, park in your
Yep.
driveway, and cater your graduation party.
Yes.
That's for your group. That's okay. The
So
way
the-
this is written.
Yeah, so I guess the question was, since we're talking about these groups, did the term catering only apply to the individual single-family resident, or did it also spill over into B and C under this particular section? It
The way
doesn't,
it's written, the intent is that it applies to the single-family residence.
only, you're saying,
Oh,
okay.
But
B and C, with the boat ramp example, truck could park in the designated parking space and operate.
Okay,
That'll fall
and
under number
so
3.
anyone who's a resident could then come in and purchase things individually?
Yes.
Okay.
So if the council wants that, I think that's the way it's written now. If you want that changed or tightened up, we can do that. But the way it's written now, in my opinion, that's exactly.
Well, I think logically, that's the only way it can function, because you don't want to have to quest a homeowner's example, taking on the responsibility for paying for whatever, so.
No.
We usually treat it like a special event.
Okay.
That's why you won't see every business and their mother coming in.
Right.
It has to require permission from the HOA board members. I do know that parking on that property or any property, let's say in that neighborhood specifically, the fire chief does have specifics on where you can park and what kind of ground you can park it on. And
That would have to be dealt with, for sure.
well, I'm saying there is some actual guidelines to that, because I usually have to rope out 15 feet from a bush, and I have to make sure that they're on a certain type of ground material per the truck, and all the wheels have to be on a certain matching surface. My question, I did find it, it's on page 15, and it's down at the bottom, and it talks about limiting one truck per property. Now, I can understand residential, having one truck on the property, but what if somebody wanted 2 types of truck? So let's talk about a graduation party. What if someone wanted a food and then maybe like an ice cream truck? Would you do it by space available? Again, by regulation of trucks have to be X amount of feet apart from each other for fire safety? Or are we just gonna limit it to just one solely?
That's a very good question. I just have the ordinance, which section?
It's on
is-
the checklist.
Oh, on the checklist.
Yes,
Oh,
ma'am.
okay.
It's on, I mean, it's technically page 3 of the checklist.
Okay,
It's at the bottom.
yes, no problem.
So no more than one mobile food truck shall operate on a given property at any one time. And that doesn't specify what kind of property, whether it's a rec property or a residential property.
So again, maybe we have to look at again the catering part. If if it is in your home and it's a catering, I mean, if you are having a graduation party, you could have an ice cream cart, popcorn cart, I don't know, and another type of food truck. So we can look at it, that language, you know.
I wouldn't mind having specifics on, so residents will know if the truck has to be in the driveway or if they have to have it in an open space of the yard, you know, not surrounded by bushes or trees, or if they were going to be required to be parked on the road, because they will block traffic if they're blocking one of the neighborhood roads.
Road, I don't know, we are trying to.
No, I'm not saying I suggest that, I'm saying I feel like there needs to be a clarification though for residents, because those are, you know, Kona Ice comes in sometimes, ice cream truck comes in sometimes. Keith makes a great point about graduations coming up.
So this is in the ordinance as well as on the checklist, and it's on page 6 of the ordinance.
Okay.
And the way this is drafted, it does contemplate no more than one food truck on any property at any time unless a special event permit
Okay.
has been obtained, which would allow multiple food trucks, and the permit would specify how many, and, you know, if there's gonna be alcohol sales, then they have to have the liquor license and all of that. So generally, one per property. If it's an event for multiple need to get the.
Just
permit.
turn it into a special event?
Special event.
Okay.
That's actually on page 8 where it talks about that, I believe. Gathering of
Which
fuel
makes
on
sense.
class
I
1,
see
class
that
2, and
too.
3.
I know that we have in here hot dog carts, and I know that created issues in Palm Beach County many years ago. Does someone have the ability to, say they live on Tequesta Drive, main thoroughway, to bring out a hot dog cart out of their garage and sell hot dogs during the day, and then throw that back in the garage?
Under this draft ordinance, no.
No,
They could not do that, you
Okay.
know.
because they're selling to the public.
Because it should be, that person lives on a single home, on a single lot.
Yep.
Then it's more like, here says, a catering for a specific event. He cannot be selling, like, does not include that are open to the public.
Right.
So if I cannot sell hot dogs from my home, basically,
Perfect.
to anyone.
There is a
Sorry.
a limitation on the number of operating days, where it says, this is
Yeah.
on page 6, it says it can't operate on a given property more than 2 consecutive days in a calendar month, and shall not operate on any given property more than 10 days per calendar year.
Mhm.
So that would preclude anything like that. But I did have one more question. On page 7, it's under restroom facility, and this kind of goes to the HOA situation. It says, mobile food trucks operating on property for a duration more than 3 hours shall have a written agreement with a property owner that confirms the food truck employees have access to a flushable restroom within 400 feet of the vending location during the hours of operation. Does that, like in your case, Lori, does that pose an issue?
We usually don't do anything over 3 hours, but
You limit it-
just for clarification, in the future, if that ever does happen, does allowing them to use a household count?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, we obviously have welcoming people that would offer that.
Okay.
We've done it with contractors when they work on the dock.
I have read a number of different ordinances and this and that, and I think this is a really good proposed ordinance for this subject matter. And after these comments, it will be further.
Yeah, no, I think you were able to answer all our questions, and there were answers in the ordinance, so.
I think you guys did a good job.
Yep.
No more further questions?
None.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's move on. Number 4, council discussion on pesticide management. Is Mr. Shaw on?
He's via Zoom.
Brian's gonna need to let him in.
Brad, you might,
He's in. Mr. Shaw, you're very difficult to hear.
Is this any better? Is it closer to the,
Yeah, there we go.
okay, just let me know if it's not that great.
We can hear you over here.
yeah, you sound good.
Hey, hello. Hi, guys, thanks for the opportunity. Jeremy, thanks for getting you on the agenda, or the EAC on the agenda. I first just want to thank you, all you guys, for the approval of the fertilizer management revisions to the village code. I know that was a lot to digest and a lot to consider. And for pesticides, I'm not going to rehash the backup that I provided, but moving on to pesticide management, the EAC's recommendations for revisions to that portion of the code are minor compared to the aforementioned fertilizer management provisions. The primary reason for this is because the state has preemption authority on pesticide regulations under the Structural Pest Control Act administered by the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. In speaking with Gary Stanford, the environmental manager at the Department Bureau of Licensing Enforcement, he stated that he would see nothing to prohibit Tequesta from adopting an ordinance that cites some of the details of the state law. He further went on to emphasize that all commercial applicators must be licensed and certified through his agency. So, given the gravity of the potential misuse of pesticides and the possible danger posed to the health of our citizens, our pets, wildlife, and our ecosystem, the EOC recommends that the village cite some of the key requirements of the state law in our code of ordinances. By amending and expanding upon the 4 sentences that currently comprise the pesticide management section of our code, The village can make strides in educating and informing their residents as to, one, who can and who cannot apply pesticides to their property. Two, possibly impart a greater awareness of the possible negative implications and potential hazards of pesticide misapplication. Three, provide choices for homeowners, landscapes, for example, use of integrated pest management strategies or having less lawn and more native plantings that don't require pesticides. Further, one can only imagine that properly licensed and trained commercial applicators would be pleased to see that the village is stressing the importance of homeowners only hiring qualified and certified companies. Finally, as is true with the revised fertilizer management section of our code, revised pesticide language within the code is only effectual if the commercial applicators and the citizens are made aware of the changes. If changes are approved and made to the pesticide management section of the code, and if the EAC can be of any assistance in getting the word out, please let us know. Whether it be in an article in smoke signals or some other vehicle, we would be more than happy to assist. And that's all I have. Any questions?
Any questions?
No questions, but thank you for putting all that together.
I guess I have a question. Who, based on this, who has the ability to use pesticides in the village of Tequesta? Would this prevent residents from doing this on their own?
It does not. Residents, homeowners are exempt from state pesticide laws. It's only applying to commercial operators.
So I guess the one question I had when I first looked at this was, since the state law already, the way I understood it, the state law already mandates these requirements on the part of commercial entities, unless I'm wrong about that. So it's a nice to put it into the Tequesta code, but I'm wondering, does it really change anything, or are we just simply kind of putting it out front, so to speak?
Well, that's a good point. I think, and that gets to my last point. I think it will achieve nothing if it's not publicized. If we don't educate the public and the commercial applicators that you have to do this, I see it will look a fruitless endeavor, but I'm hoping to help spread the word. If we cite some just of the key requirements that the state requires, that they need a license, they need to be certified, have to pass the exam. The trucks have to have identification on the back that they have the proper license. It can only help, and spread the word. I doubt, I just don't, I'm not confident that many homeowners are aware of what's going on in their landscape. I think this would make a modest step in the right direction.
Okay. I think that it would allow the village of Tequesta to enforce the state-regulated laws that you're referring to, Frank, rather than having to get a state agency to come out. You see someone that's spraying a yard and they don't have a license number on the side of their truck, which I think is mandated by the state as well. Then they would have to call a state agency. The state agency, by the time they got out there, people would be gone or what have you. But I think it would allow us to enforce that locally rather than having a state agency come out and enforce the law.
And I mean, that's a good point. And I guess that's part of my question too, is does it actually give us the authority to enforce it locally, or is it still basically, because certain things, the state basically preempts and they say, hey, okay, this is our job. Okay, so I guess this is directed to you, Keith. Does it actually give us local enforcement authority, or do we still have to refer back to the state?
Well, it's an interesting question. The statute empowers the department, the state, to enforce it. The statute also states that it's the duty of municipal officers to enforce and or assist state inspectors to enforce. So there is language in the state law.
We have that authority.
It's I think about our guys actually, our code enforcement officer on the street actually doing this, and then I suspect there would have to be some kind of meaningful. He's got to be trained what to do. He's not just going to know that guy's a commercial applicator applying the wrong kind of pesticide or without a license. So, and then, and I would need to look at this a little more closely as to whether the actual enforcement action would still have to be at the state level, or if we can bring that to our magistrate. And if we bring it to our magistrate, are we bringing it against the applicator or the homeowner? You know, who do we want to drop the hammer on, so to speak? Do you want to put it on the homeowner who hired the guy and with all good intentions, or do you want to put it against the applicator who doesn't have the license? And if you put it against the applicator who doesn't have a license, that's not a typical code enforcement matter, because typically in a code enforcement scenario, you're citing the property owner with the ultimate penalty of a lien against the property. So this would probably have to be a citation method enforcement action if it's against the applicator, and that's taking it to county court, where, you know, now we have to open a county court lawsuit and proceed that way. So my initial thought is that if the village steps into the enforcement arena on this, it's gonna be an expensive endeavor, because for the reasons that I just articulated. Now, I will look into this much more carefully if that's the direction the council wants to go in, but those are my initial thoughts and some of the things that we would have to work through.
But now, as an agent of the municipality, we can report that to the state, and the state can then run with it.
That is correct.
Okay.
I mean, conceptually, I think, I like what we're talking about here, but it's, you know, as they say, the devil's in the details. So I think that's where we have to work through that to see, you know, as the vice mayor is saying, well, maybe our role is simply to assist. And if we suspect something, whether it's a code officer or a police officer, their obligation is then to report to the state agency and let them handle it. I'm not saying that is the answer. I don't know what Jeremy's thoughts are on this either, but.
So, to an earlier comment, we can certainly prepare an ordinance if the council wants us to prepare an ordinance and put it on the books that matches state law. If your goal, in my opinion, is to educate your residents, I'm not sure that's the best way to do it, because everyone is not sitting at home on Unicode digging through the code book.
Right.
Some people are maybe, but everyone's not. And if it's an education campaign you want, there might be more effective ways to get that word out through your social media platform, through your website, through your newsletter. If that's your goal, putting an ordinance on the books may not be as effective as actually talking to your residents and your constituents about it.
And I think the formation of the EAC is that resource for that education side of things, is where I'm leaning towards.
Can I just chime in?
Please.
Yeah, I don't think that, I see enforcement as a dangerous road to go down. In speaking to Mr. Stamper, the director of Bureau of Licensing and Enforcement, I believe he mentioned to me several instances where municipalities contacted him about some issues in their town, and they came out and enforced it. But I do think it would be serve us, you know, the revision of this pesticide portion of the ordinance is, I don't think it's, I don't want to say it the wrong way, but I don't think it's heavy lifting compared to the fertilizer ordinance. I mean, we have 4 sentences in there, and they're not reflective of the current state law. So I think we should at least reflect what the state law says, whether it be add a couple more sentences, but it's not entirely accurate. Or at least it's vague enough where it doesn't mean much.
And I don't disagree with anything Mr. Shaw said. I think this, I agree completely. This is nothing like the fertilizer project. That was a lot of work. This, I agree, would not be a difficult ordinance to write if the council wants us to write it. I still think if the goal is education, you should not end with the ordinance. That at least would be a starting point.
Can I ask a question real quick, Mr. Shaw? The department, it references department here. Is it referencing the state? Because it talks about departments that issue licenses, departments to check for issue employee identification cards. And so I just want to make sure that we're not talking about village staff.
No.
because I think we start getting to that where we're issuing license and we're issuing ID cards and things like that, it's a whole other ballgame for our staff. That we're not ready for.
Yeah, absolutely not. That's the Department of Agriculture.
I have a quick question. Was there, Robert, I saw that in the email, there was not a master list, but it looked like there was a database that you could look up for Palm Beach County and Martin. Has there been any kind of, just sampling done locally of common applicators we see in the area to see if some of them already are licensed and have a certified operator?
That's a good point. I don't know. I don't know if there's a up-to-date list, comprehensive list. I'm not sure.
Are we aware of any violations in the Tequesta area?
Yeah.
Mr. Bradford?
Yeah, I could say that.
Tom Bradford, 44 Chestnut Trail, Tequesta. The two primary violators of existing law relative to the application of pesticides, number one is lawn maintenance companies. If you look on the back of the trailer of any lawn maintenance company, they've got glyphosate on that truck and they are spraying and they are not allowed to spray. They're not, that's not in their permit. The second is, of course, the homeowner who does not follow the label instructions of what they buy at the hardware store or Home Depot. Those are the top two. I saw it just last week. I was sitting on my back porch. My neighbor has comprehensive lawn maintenance services, soup to nuts. They were spraying glyphosate. They don't have a permit. They do not have any training because they don't have the permit.
They don't have to have a permit, they have to have a license.
Yeah, a license, I'm sorry. Yes,
Well,
the
yeah,
license to do
and I
so.
know that my son actually owns a lawn maintenance business in Central Florida, and he has a state licensed pesticide license. And, you know, he's licensed to spray up to certain different levels of chemicals and stuff, you know, and they've got different levels that you have to have a certain license to apply in fertilization, and even spray Roundup. In order for lawn maintenance companies to spray Roundup, that was enacted probably a good 10 or 12 years ago, that you had to go get a license just to spray Roundup. So some maintenance companies may not have that pesticide license.
That's correct.
But if they're operating legally, they're supposed to have that license.
Yeah, and they're also supposed to have that thing on the side of their vehicle. And so you can look and see if they don't have that, there's a violation right there.
Well, that's what I stated earlier. Typically, you got your license, you know, on the side of the truck, you know, for that. But I'm not sure that you have to have your pest control license on the side of it. I'd have to dig into that to find out for sure on that. But I know that it certainly is regulated, and some of them, and the larger ones, the more reputable ones, I would say that all do have a license to spray pesticides. Because it's a big fine if you're out there spraying it and you don't have that license.
Correct.
And from the EAC, that a lot of this is very similar to fertilizer in the sense that it's all in the environment and we're surrounded by water and nature, and it affects it as much as fertilizer. So just finding the regulations somehow, or education on teaching people, be aware of what you're doing. I'm sure your son is trained on how to apply if he's on a property on the water or if he's near a basin.
I don't think that varies whether you're geographically living on a lake or anything like that, the same requirements whether you live inland or on a coastal area. And I'm not that familiar with them, to be honest with you, but you know, whoever is holding that license, their license is at jeopardy if they have gotten someone out spraying under their license and they're not mixing the chemicals correctly and over mixing chemicals into the water, and they're putting it down at a higher concentrate than what's supposed to be.
And that definitely does happen.
And that's what, you know, they can lose their license over it. And I know that I've been in circumstances before where I have actually worked underneath other people's license and stuff, so they're responsible. And they hold their, you know, there's a lot of value to that license. They don't want to lose it. So, you know, they should be cognizant of the fact that if people are not out there, you know, applying the pesticides, you know, correctly.
Well, you know, I think the idea of embracing the state law in an ordinance format so that we reflect that makes a lot of sense. But I agree. I mean, the key is going to be education, and I think Molly's suggestion of trying to identify those who are properly licensed, properly approved, and providing that information to the homeowners is a good one. And then, and as everybody's saying, the education's key. I mean, actually, one benefit of the new community center is with the kind of space we're going to have, these are the kinds of programs we're going to be able to run. We could run an educational program like this for the whole community and invite people in and, you know, really make a push to educate, whether it's the fertilizer issue, whether it's the pesticide issue, any of these environmental issues, and that's going to be a great thing for us.
Yeah.
Again, I like the venue of being able to utilize when you send out the utility bills and stuff to people. You can put a little flyer in there, you know, be a you know, a good citizen, make sure that your lawn maintenance company is a state licensed, you know, pesticide and fertilization licensed contractor. You know, just make them aware that it is something that is regulated and that you actually have to have a license for it. Simply ask, could I see your license to apply these herbicides or pesticides in my yard?
Absolutely.
I know that, you know, I mean, when I do mine, I mean, I make sure that my dog doesn't go back out there for a certain period of time. I read the labels and stuff, you know, I mean, I'm allowed to do that as an individual and try to be aware of that. And so I think that it's a simple thing that would be very inexpensive to do that, is to put a little flyer in the mail out and everybody in the city would get it.
That's right. I would like to respond to Molly and what Frank said. When the EAC was first created, I remember looking up on the FDEP's website, and they had the list of the people who are licensed in both Palm Beach and Martin County is what I looked at. Now, whether that's, you know, fallen by the wayside because of COVID-19 or whatnot, but it existed in the summer of, when did we start? 2019.
Yeah.
So sooner or later, that list will be updated if it hasn't been already. So we can distribute that, and people will know, my guy's not on there, or my guy has it, you know?
Well, we can put it on our website, we could put it in the flyer, like Bruce is suggesting. I mean, we've got all sorts of outlets that we can utilize, so.
Right.
I think my question too is kind of has anyone just, I mean, maybe this isn't feasible, but just driven around, I mean, a lot of these people are here weekly, daily, like, who do we see the most? Can we just drive around, take down their names and look them up and see if they're, just to see what kind of impact that would be to, you know, we might have a bunch of people that have to all of a sudden change their providers, which I think this is definitely the direction we need to go, but I'm just thinking, you know, logistically. And then I did see Gary reply that the lawn maintenance companies, because like you said, a lot of it, the lawn maintenance companies will apply the pesticides. He said that sometimes they have one individual that is licensed and has their certified operator. So is that acceptable? If maybe the lawn maintenance company as a whole isn't licensed or certified, but if they hire an individual that is that allowed or no? I wasn't clear on that.
I read something just recently that said it was not allowed, but I
Certain type of license will allow you to certify more than one company. Like me as a general contractor, I can actually use my license for 2 separate companies that are not associated with one another whatsoever. So I can have one in Jacksonville that I have a separate construction company that uses my license. I can have one in Miami and do it. Or they can be across the street from one another, but you can use your license for more than one company.
Yeah, I mean, the way Gary worded it seems that
It might be possible.
one person is, I think that that's only that single person for that company could apply. Maybe just confirm that and see, so.
I want to say that the EAC did look into that, and there could be the head person has the license, but they have to provide X amount of training to their staff that's going to be applying. So not every single person is actually licensed, but the license holder does have to provide some sort of training, and then the state, they have a basis of the type of training. Whether or not the companies are doing that training or not is unknown.
The state's program is basically set up to train the trainer. So if this man gets the license and he can train the people under that roof, that's acceptable usually.
And that's not uncommon, but do you have to then have records to support and verify the proper training has been provided? I would think you would. I was saying train the trainer is a very acceptable means in many businesses, but I was saying usually you have to have acceptable records to demonstrate that people have gone through that training you've certified them in some way, shape, or form under that program.
I would hope so, and if you were the guy that held the license, even
Yeah,
though
you'd be
you
at
trained
jeopardy
these
as-
5 or 10 people,
Yeah.
you want to make darn sure they're doing it the way you trained them
Right,
when they're out there in
correct.
the field, because you could lose your license.
Right.
I guess couple things real quick, Mr. Bradford. You mentioned that your homeowner doing this on their own is a violation?
No.
No, okay.
They typically,
Might overuse it, or,
they won't follow the labeled instructions that are on the back of a container, for example.
but they're not in violation of anything, any state regulations?
Well, yeah.
Oh, if they're over-
Potentially, but it's not in regard to this licensing and
Got it.
so on and so forth, yes.
I do agree with Mrs. Young on the aspect of, before we move forward with a big changing of the law or an ordinance, that we should do an educational side on our own through many resources that we have, and get the word out there. I'm not in favor of doing an ordinance just for educational purposes at this time for this subject. That's just me.
So if I can add one commentary to that, so typically, when my historian is telling me, council, and it's something that I believe in, we don't want to pass an ordinance just to memorialize a state statute. I mean, that muddies up our ordinance when you have a whole bunch of state ordinances. So unless we plan on making significant changes to that, or then we would just not do it and just educate the public. But if there's a significant change to it, then we of course do it. So that's just my 2 cents.
Well, it's my opinion as well, Kyle, to just try to educate the public rather than turning this into a full-fledged ordinance and stuff, that we're basically doing duplication of what the state's regulating anyway.
So we'll put together a little bit of a plan from the PR standpoint, and we'll come up with something.
But may I suggest a potential problem for you to consider, that if you go about the task of informing and educating the public, and the informed and educated public realizes that you don't even have the most up-to-date statute in your ordinance, that could be embarrassing. You do have it in your code today, it just doesn't meet the latest edition of the state statute. It would be wise to do that and then do your educational program. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, that's what I was suggesting earlier. I think since we already do reference something, why don't we reference what's appropriate and current?
Sure.
And I don't think that really will muddy up the code in any way, shape, or form. And then I think we all agree education is the key
Sure,
to this issue.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's great, thanks.
Thank you.
You want to check in with Mr. Shaw real quick?
Mr. Shaw, do you have any other closing comments?
Well, yeah, I think to amend the ordinance wouldn't take much. I mean, it would, at most, you could do it, at minimum, you could do a paragraph and cover the key parts of it. A company needing to be licensed and to have a certified operator. And just to kind of respond to Kyle's very good question about, are we having violations in the village? I think the problem is we don't know, because your average homeowner doesn't know what's being applied to the lawn. They wouldn't know the question to ask. And so I think we can do both, maybe a cursory amendment to the current supply management, and then we'll certainly assist in any way we can in getting the word out.
And I guess I still have concerns in general with the enforcement side of it, of that ordinance, if we add certain things that are required by the village to go ahead and manage.
Well, let us take a look at the statute.
Okay.
We'll make sure it matches, that we're up to date with our statute. And
Let's start with
if
that.
there's
I mean, I'm proud of that.
anything from there, we can bring it back to you that, it sounds like we need to at least match the state statute, and I agree with that, so we'll make sure that we do that.
Okay.
If I might just add, I think it's a great idea to educate the public, but the Department of Agriculture is extremely helpful in educating the public. And a simple phone call made to the Department of Agriculture, they come here to your town and they see what's going on. So for instance, if Mr. Bradford had a neighbor, not that you necessarily want to make a phone call on your neighbor, you go through your educational piece first, but they are very responsive. They came out last year and they visited me over at the Public Works building. Somebody actually called that we were spraying Roundup. And we showed them what we were spraying, that we're using a natural product. And I just say they're very responsive if you make a phone call to them. They'll come out to educate the public, and they will enforce you know, the rules and the laws that are applicable in the village.
Great.
That's great.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to number 5, discussion and use of the logo on the new recreational building.
So this, we had you know, our Indian's always been our logo. Back in 2015, there was a design of the feather logo that many of you guys have seen. Back in 2015, the council basically said that the Indian was the main logo. In certain circumstances, the feather could be used, and so staff is asking for that circumstance to be the recreation center. And so with council's blessing, we'd like to use the feather at the recreation center in the signs as opposed to the Indian.
But
And I have included that in this packet. I thought, you know, I threw up a little mock of what, you know, the sign would look like. It would be blue, of course. And then you see in the lobby, it's got the kind of the feather feel in the lobby. I can answer any questions or anything you may have. We just felt like the feather would be more of a new feel with the new recreation center that's coming on board.
But my question was on the outside of the building, on the top, on the gable, it would still have the Indian head.
We'd like to use the feather on both.
Oh, so put the feather on the outside.
Yeah, couldn't use Photoshop that well to be able to try to mock it up
Gotcha.
on the facility, but that would be the plan.
And we want to say recreation center, correct?
Should say recreation center, so we're gonna, through the planning department, make sure we update the sign, because it did say community center. It doesn't need to say recreation center. So I'm looking for consensus that you guys are okay with us using the feather. If there's anybody who has any objection to it, then, you know, we can decide which direction we need to go.
So you're going to use it both on the exterior and on the interior then?
That's right.
So no Indian head at all.
No.
So why not use the Indian head?
We just felt like it changed the feel of the facility. We have more of a, almost a youthful type feel of this. It's just a new kind of brand feel for the recreation center. If you guys want us to use the Indian, we'll use the Indian.
I mean, I wouldn't mind using both. I don't know if I want to completely eliminate the Indian head completely. It is historic to Tequesta.
I don't know if it's historic.
We're not eliminating it,
Yeah.
we're not using it on the recreation center.
Because it was created a couple years ago.
Yeah, that's
You know,
what I
this
was
is,
gonna
this
ask.
is the kind of thing where it'd be interesting maybe to get some community input on this. I could go either way. You know, when I first saw this, I thought we were going to use the Indian head on the exterior and the feather on the inside, and I was fine with that. You know, I don't know if there's strong feelings about the Indian head or not, quite honestly. It's been around, I mean, it's been around for, I think, 50, 60 years.
And
so-
I would actually second that.
So it is historic.
Put it out there and ask the community what they
I
want.
think I'd have, Lori, you can do a, what do we call it, the Survey Monkey? I'd like to put it out there and see what people have to say about it. And let's get some input rather than just us 5 making that call. That would be my suggestion.
I'm fine with that.
It was a pretty big deal changing the logo, I think. Even though I like the other logo, it's very attractive.
I will check on our time frame. It may be that, you know, if we have to get this in pretty quick because of the building materials, that, you know, if council wants to discontinue using the Indian, we will, because we may not have time to put it out for community feedback. So I'll have to check on that. If we don't, we'll just continue with the Indian, and that's okay.
Well, I definitely like the feather on the inside. I think that looked good. So, yeah, it's just really the outside.
Okay.
I could go along with that.
Is there a marquee sign as well?
Yeah,
That's what the first one is?
That's what the marquee sign looks like now, and the only thing that will change,
Would
unless
be-
we can do, unless we have time to do a community survey for this, the only thing that would change would be, instead of being request the community center, we request the recreation center.
Okay.
I'm just in favor of trying to keep something consistent for that building. And I think changing it up might, I'm just not, I'm opposed to that. So I would like to see the kind of consistent both inside and out.
Are we putting this before a vote?
I don't think we can do that, but
Can't tonight, but again, if we have time for a survey, I think that would be good. But if we don't, then we'll have to put it to a vote. You know, obviously, it maybe next council meeting, if you're on a tight timeline there, Jeremy, I don't know.
Okay. Let me work on the timeframe.
Okay.
Last two times I saw them, they were asking me what the verdict was.
They were after you?
Yeah,
Okay.
We hadn't had a chance yet, so.
Okay.
Sorry, I was under a different impression because these pictures were not what you just said, so.
Anybody have any further thoughts? Jeremy, if you can get back
Yeah,
to us?
I've got some outside of this, or, you know.
Well,
We're
done with this?
done with the sign deal?
Yeah.
All right, moving on to any other matters, Mr.
Okay.
Prince.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to the fellow councilman tonight and stuff. You know, it's, the mayoral election is coming up, you know, and who we want to vote and support for the upcoming year. And last year, when I first became a council person, and, you know, it was my first meeting realistically on the board, and Abby, of course, had been, you know, the mayor for 8 or 10 years, and so it was kind of like a no-brainer, you know, when it all came up. And so it's fixing to happen, you know, and because of the Sunshine Law, I can't talk amongst my fellow councilmen and ask them about their desires and ambitions, and if they would like to be the mayor, and if so, why you would like to be the mayor, and why you feel like you're qualified to be the mayor, because obviously I don't think that I could go in and do half the job of what Abby has done over the past 8 years as the mayor of the village of Sequesta. So I just wanted to discuss it real briefly, or as long as you guys would like tonight, and find out if anyone is really interested in becoming the mayor, so that we can, you know, I'd hate to nominate you and you had no desire to do it, and never you or what have you. I mean, so I just wanted to talk about it a little bit and find out what everybody's desires were on it.
Well, I appreciate the open conversation. I think it is important. I'll just say that it's been an honor to be the vice mayor for the last year, and I've really enjoyed that opportunity and would like to continue if the council sees fit to continue in that role as vice mayor.
And of course, I've been on this council obviously for a lot of years, but that in and of itself doesn't qualify anybody, I don't think, to serve in that capacity. But I'm deeply embedded in the affairs of the community, and you know, if the council wanted me to serve in that capacity, I'd be more than happy to do so as mayor.
So does anybody else have any aspirations other than Frank and Kyle? I know I don't. I mean, I certainly, I mean, so I thought that was kind of a given. I would have came out of the box, and I
You might be surprised.
I think it's safe to say that anyone on council, and possibly even council-elects, would be up for serving the residents of Tequesta to the best of their capability. I don't think anyone would ever say no unless they were, I really don't believe that.
Well, if somebody nominated me, I would say no. I mean, I have no desire to be the mayor. I don't have the time to do what I think the job requires you to do.
Sure.
I mean,
I
I've got
don't
a full.
know if anyone had the time like Abby did.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a
God bless
company,
her.
yeah, so I certainly don't have the time. I think it would be great to be able to serve the city or the village in, you know, a capacity like that. But I think that you have to have the time and certain knowledge and stuff to be able to do it, you know, correctly and give it what you have and stuff on it. So I appreciate both of you guys' input, and I guess we'll decide on that on next week.
The other thing I would say too is, you know, Abby's time and the energy she was able to put in that position obviously resulted in her serving for the mayor for an extended period of time. I do think that there has been a benefit in the past to the mayoral position, you know, moving amongst other members of the council, if those members, again, have the time and want to serve in that capacity. So I would like to see us get back to, you know, it all depends on what the future holds, but I think it would be good to get back to a situation where, you know, maybe a mayor serves for 2 or 3 years, and then it transitions to other members of the council who have the interest and the desire to serve in that capacity. It is a lot of work, there's no question about it. The time commitment can increase dramatically, but I think what Abby showed not that we didn't have mayors prior to Abby that did a good job, I think we did, but what she showed was that there's an opportunity, if you have the time and you can make the commitment to it, to really, not just, I don't want to say elevate the mayoral position, but elevate the village on a local level, on a state level, that I think, then there's lots of benefits that flow from that. I think she was unusual, and she took it on for 8 years. I don't know if I envision anybody doing that again. It certainly wasn't the history that we had. And again, like I said, I think there's merit to having that role and the vice mayor role, move every couple of years to other members, if they have the time and the interest.
Keith, can I ask you a question? I know on the next meeting, when we do the reorganization, you'll explain the process. Could you give us like a little cliff notes of it for anyone who hasn't gone through it yet?
So strictly speaking, there's 2 ways to proceed, and more often than not, they get blended, but we always get through it. So as with anything else the council does to take action, somebody can make a motion. Lori Brandon serve as mayor. If there's a second to the motion, then that motion is handled at that time. The other way to proceed is that the chair can accept nominations. So a nomination does not require anyone to second it. You could say, I nominate Bruce Prince. Are there any other nominations? I nominate Frank D'Ambra. Are there any other, theoretically there could be 5 nominations. And then, and I think to Mr. Prince's point, you nominate Mr. Prince. Mr. Prince, do you accept the nomination? Based on what your comments were, you'd probably say no, thank you.
Correct.
But ultimately, after the chair asked, is there a nomination? Is there any other nominations? And if you had more than 1 nomination, then you would vote on them in the order that they were made. And whoever gets the most votes does it that way. So it's a slightly different process. Obviously, the simpler way is if somebody makes a motion, and then there's a vote on that motion if it's seconded, and if the motion passes, then you're done with that action. If the motion doesn't pass, then you're back to your starting point, and you can either take another motion or you can try nominations. So, like I said, usually, I've been doing this for 20 years, and 8 times out of 10, somebody will say, I nominate Lori Brandon. I second that. It happens all the time. It's kind of funny. But as I said, you have to follow through it.
Right? Second.
And so that's the Cliff Notes version of what I'll explain again on next Thursday.
Well,
then you do the same thing for the vice mayor.
Right. I'll just say, I think that after Mayor Abbey, the expectations for the involvement, you mentioned, in involvement within the community and time spent doing the local political side of things within the county and so forth, I think are very high. Yeah. And so I think even as a council, we might even have some of those high expectations to do a lot of that interaction. So, there's a lot of important things going to happen next year with, a building or 2 coming on US 1, obviously the bridge shutdown, annexation, some business ideas moving forward. So it's going to take a lot of work, and as a father of 4 and running my own business, it's just a lot. I don't know, and so as if it's your will, I'd be happy to do vice mayor, and happy to do that.
Yeah, no, I completely concur. There's, like I said, Abby set a high bar. Of course, it seems like every year we have a lot of work to do, and we have a lot of opportunities to pursue. And I
think there's a lot of work outside of the chamber.
I know what you're saying, exactly. But in that sense, like I said, she's kind of set a standard, and I think whoever serves in the mayoral role going forward, those are going to be big shoes to fill, and I think that person's going to aspire to contribute in the same fashion to the village that she was able to.
Mrs. Young, do you have any comments? Fair enough. Fair enough. Mr. Prince, any other questions or comments?
I appreciate you guys with your candor. I think that helps the other councilmen as well as myself and councilwomen as well, for us to be able to better move forward in nominating or electing, the next mayor for the village and stuff. So I appreciate everybody's comments.
Yeah.
It helps me out, you know, so how I want to move forward too with mine.
I appreciate this conversation because I know my first year on, it was, whoa, what just happened?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the second year, I was like, whoa, that just happened.
No, it was
So
great. It was great that you
we
brought
should
it
do
up.
this, we should make this part of the agenda or a workshop.
Yeah,
And
good
it's
idea.
a big deal. I mean, I
It
know
is.
that it caught me a bit, you know, off guard and stuff, so, you know, it is a big deal, and it's a big responsibility, and, you know, if you nominated somebody that really wasn't prepared or hadn't thought about it that much, I mean, if somebody nominated me, I thought about it, and I know that I don't want to be the mayor.
Yeah.
I just couldn't do the job, you know, that I think that it warrants. And so, I mean, I think it would be great to do something like that, but again, you know, to be redundant, I don't have the time for it, that it requires.
But I do think you make an excellent councilman.
But thank you anyway.
Are we still on any other matters?
We are still on any other matters.
There was something I meant to do at the last workshop or council meeting, and I failed to do so. But I wanted to thank both Lori and Lori Brandon for the work they did with the election, the canvassing board. Obviously, we had a very close election. I think there was one municipality, Hypoluxo, I think that was decided by one vote, which first time I've ever heard of that, but ours was decided by 3, and I know both Lori's were at the canvassing board office until the early morning on Wednesday. And then Lori had to go back down on, was it Friday or Saturday? Friday.
Luckily, there was no Saturday.
So the amount of time and work you put into that was exemplary, both of you. And I just wanted to publicly express my appreciation and thank you both for all the work that you guys did, because
Thank
I
you
know
for
it
being
was
our backup.
extraordinary.
I almost had to use you. And I will say, the clerk's office, they are very thorough. And they are on the
Yep.
phone at 1:30 a.m. with the candidates, keeping them like updated and keeping everyone in the loop and being very professional as well. And I really appreciate that.
And I know you're going to be sworn in at the next council meeting, but we haven't formally said congratulations to you from the podiums here. But again, congratulations on your win. Looking forward to working with you here in the council.
And bring a jacket.
Yeah, the only thing other than matters, I know that through the work with the fire department, were able to acquire some additional funds from the COVID-19, and that was it's a big win for everybody. So congratulations on that effort and the work. So I know the team's all been congratulated, but pretty remarkable. I know that we had a business meeting this past week, and we are moving forward with a couple different events. Looks like in July we're going to try to do some June, July-ish. July 4th-ish, June-ish.
June 1st through July 4th.
Yep, of kind of another idea of collecting receipts and going around and supporting local businesses and putting together, so.
Okay. Outstanding.
Yeah, I think maybe it might be fun to do like the hot dog days of July and allow residents to encourage residents to bring their dogs out. I don't know, just an idea. So.
And sell hot dogs.
And sell hot dogs from your house. Love it.
Speaking of events, one last thing. Is our expectation that we will be going forward with the chili cook-off and Tequesta Fest full throttle this year, Jeremy? Is that, given the vaccines and the proliferation of vaccines and?
As of right now, that's the plan.
Okay.
Our plan is to move forward with those events. You know, obviously, we can get sidebar, but we think we're going to be able to do those events.
Okay.
We'll figure out something out there.
All right.
I can't speak for the cook-off because, you know, they're their own entity, but I know
Right.
that's our plan is to move forward. We'll have a different conversation about the cost of that event this year versus what in the past, but our plan is to move forward with some type of event.
Okay.
All righty,
That's
anything?
it for me.
All right.
That's all I
I'm
got.
good.
Thank you, everyone. We'll close this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Cal.
Good
meeting.
Got it done.
Mr. Sun.
How do you?
I don't blame you.
You guys deserve it. You guys went above and beyond.